Today I'm going to be talking about the worst blockbusters from the 2010s. For this list, I looked at the 10 highest grossing movies from each year and picked my least favorite. So let's get started. From 2010, we have the live-action Alice in Wonderland. Tim Burton directing Alice in Wonderland should be a perfect match, but unfortunately the film suffers from a cliche, uninteresting chosen one plot, trying to make Alice this Lord of the Rings type heroine. It doesn't fit within the world of Alice in Wonderland, it doesn't have any of the quirkiness or whimsy that Alice in Wonderland should have, and somehow this movie managed to make over $1 billion. 2011, we have Transformers Dark of the Moon. Now, the second film, Revenge of the Fallen, is infamously terrible, but somehow, despite all the complaints people had about the second one, they somehow managed to make this one even worse. Megan Fox didn't want to return for this one, and while she wasn't good in the first two films, the actress they replaced her with is somehow just as bad, possibly worse. The movie barely has a plot. It's pretty much just 3 hours of explosions, and it drags out so much that it just gets repetitive and stops being fun. It has a pretty simple plot about the moon landing and how the Decepticons were involved with it, which could be interesting, but it overstuffs that concept instead of just keeping it simple. This movie somehow also managed to gross over $1 billion. 2012, we have Brave, a movie that is both Scottish Mulan and a ripoff of Brother Bear, so much so that my nickname for it is Mother Bear. I like that Pixar tried to do a different kind of princess movie. I like the exploration of Scottish culture and the music in this movie, but the story is so paint by numbers, and for such a ho-hum film, it still managed to gross $500 million. 2013, we have another Pixar film, Monsters University, a somewhat unnecessary prequel to Monsters, Inc. It's still pretty fun, it's got great new characters, but it just feels like a pilot episode to the Monsters at Work show on Disney+. This made almost $750 million. I'm not saying this movie deserved to bomb, but it's definitely a pretty safe film for Pixar. 2014, we have Maleficent, a movie that takes one of the most sinister villains in Disney and makes her a hero. This isn't a tragic story of a downfall or a cautionary tale, it's a misunderstood hero story. It grossed $760 million and also managed to get a sequel. 2015, we have Minions. Now, to be clear, I like this movie. It's just that out of the top 10 highest grossing movies of 2015, this is the one I like the least. There are some really funny jokes in this movie. There's a scene where a mad scientist does a bunch of clones of himself, and one of them accidentally kills the original, which causes them all to disappear. There's a scene where the Minions are in a dungeon, but none of the torture devices work on them, which leads to some really clever visual humor. Sandra Bullock gives a great fun performance as the villain. Though it can overstay its welcome at times, I still find it entertaining. Now, when this movie was coming out, the Minions were on everything. It had one of the most aggressive marketing campaigns I've ever seen, and it clearly worked because this film grossed over $1 billion. 2016, we have Sing, a movie I'm pretty indifferent on. When you really think about it, there's really no reason for these characters to be animals. In a movie like Zootopia, which came out around the same time, the characters being animals expands the humor and world. Here, the characters being animals is just kind of a thing. The plot also is, again, very safe, not that interesting, and that there are some good voice performances, it just isn't that memorable of a film. People seem to really like Illumination, though, because this movie grossed over $600 million. 2017, we have Justice League. I like this movie fine when it came out, but now that I've seen the Snyder Cut, I see this as an incredibly inferior version of a much better movie. This now feels like a version of the movie that was hacked to pieces, because it was. Characters aren't given much development, particularly Cyborg, who doesn't affect the movie at all, and the pacing is fast because Warner Brothers mandated the film be no longer than exactly 2 hours, and the humor feels very awkwardly inserted. The villain's motivations are completely left out for some reason, so as a consequence, a lot of stuff is left out that was thankfully restored in the Snyder Cut. People at the time clearly didn't care about the poor reception, though, because it grossed almost $700 million. 2018, we had Incredibles 2, one of my biggest disappointments. It took almost 15 years for this movie to come out, and instead of expanding on the ideas of the original by having the characters fight crime as a family, that all takes a back seat to essentially make Elastigirl spin-off movie. If the film were called Elastigirl, I'd be less harsh, but it's not as interesting as the first film. Clearly the nostalgia for the first film paid off, though, because it grossed over $1 billion. And finally, in 2019, we have the live-action Lion King, one of the most pointless and unnecessary films to ever exist. It doesn't add anything new, it does nothing to justify its existence, the characters and performances are completely emotionless, but somehow this movie also managed to gross over $1 billion and is also getting a sequel this year. So there you have it. There's my picks for the worst blockbusters of the 2010s. Let me know what yours were in the comments.